Hello folks, and welcome to the start of another project log. Now, this time Intel and GIGABYTE got in touch wanting to do a crazy mod to show off the new Core i9-9900KS. Now, of course, that sits at the top of Intel's mainstream CPU stack, which means we need to fill it with top-end hardware. So that meant going full WaterForce AORUS on everything that we possibly could, because after all, it's GIGABYTE, it only makes sense. So to that extent, we've got a RTX 2080 Ti WaterForce Extreme here. We've got the Z390 WaterForce motherboard, so that's the one with the complete inbuilt block, which is absolutely huge and weighs a ton. Obviously into that we're going to be putting the Core i9. We've also got M2 SSD, which is full RGB of course, along with the AORUS memory module, so we've got 32 gigabytes of that going in. We've got the AORUS 850 watt power supply, and then all of that is going to be going into one of these, which is a Cooler Master C700M chassis. Now obviously, since this is an AORUS project, we're going to be using the AORUS colors, which means lots of brushed metal and orange. Now I've not really done an orange build before, so this will be quite exciting for me. I've wanted to do one for quite a long time, but the opportunities never quite come up. So what my plan is, for some of these components, they already come with a nice brushed aluminium or steel finish. Now some of the other ones I want to have matching, so I'm thinking about maybe taking the WaterForce motherboard here, turning that silver, making it fit more in line with the other components that are going to be inside, maybe even modding some of the parts on the WaterForce RTX 2080 Ti as well. And of course, we're going to be doing a heck of a lot of work to the case, so why don't we take a look at what that's going to be like on the inside, and I'll explain why I also chose this chassis. So if you've seen my previous mods, you know that I like to sort of throw away most of the case. Now that's not because the case is bad, it's just that the nature of the construction of most modern cases is that if you want to replace any one part, you sort of end up having like a domino effect and removing all of them. So there's going to be a little bit of that going on in here as well. But I did choose this case for a reason, and it's because of modularity. So we just take a few of these bits off first, and I can show you on the inside why that matters. Now from the outset, this does look just rather case-like. Well, what's special to me here is that most of it is actually held together with screws. So things like the power supply shroud here, the motherboard tray, you can actually just remove them from the case and rotate them, do all sorts of things without having to drill apart the case. Now obviously I've got no problems with drilling apart the case, but when you do that, it does mean that the case is not designed in that particular way. So as soon as you remove the panels, it sort of becomes like an accordion and flops around everywhere. So the idea here is that even if I remove all of these parts and remake new ones to sort of fit the components how I'd like, the rest of the chassis is going to be nice and solid and should allow me to do some pretty interesting things, and I won't have to remake absolutely everything. And that's quite good because I do really like the exterior of this chassis. I think it looks really nice. So I want to try and maintain that and instead do a more classic mod, mostly on the inside. So in terms of a plan, things are still a little bit early days, so I haven't quite settled on everything that I'm going to be doing, but I'm thinking it would be quite nice to rotate the whole assembly, so I have the motherboard sitting flat like so. So we can have everything in a vertical arrangement. So I'll have that sitting like that, which means the GPU will be hanging vertically like so. I've not done a build like that, but I've really wanted to for quite a long time, and I think it should present some really interesting opportunities for using the distro plates in a slightly different way, because usually I have to make like a power supply shroud here and then just put a distro on top of it and go at 90 degrees, whereas if I'm having it like that, I can maybe put some on the sides and have them directly attached to the components. And also it's worth noting that this motherboard has right-angled connectors. Now these are a little bit harder to put into distro plates than I usually have, so usually they kind of arc around with the cables, and this one's going to have to go straight in. So having it in a slightly different arrangement should hopefully make that a little bit easier versus having it in a traditional one. Now obviously we want to use as much kind of metal as possible, so I'm going to be using thick aluminium again for the main construction, and I'm going to be brushing it this time rather than polishing it up. And then I was thinking I'm either going to use a clear orange coolant with some lights, or maybe even using frosted tubing with some pastel coolant, or alternatively I might use chrome tubing. I haven't actually decided on those particular details yet. We're going to be working through the water cooling in a little bit, but I need to figure out exactly what I'm doing first before I commit to anything like that. But in terms of a plan, that should get us most of the way, I think, and then there'll be loads of room in there for distro plates, RGB, the metal, kind of getting that whole AORUS feeling, and I'd like to try and work some of their logo into the build itself. Now, I'm not a huge fan of just tacking on logos around. I think it doesn't really work out when you do it like that. But it's quite interesting when you try and build it into something in a more interesting way. So I'd like to put it inside one of the distro plates, maybe as an engraving or as a 3D element. We'll have to see which one works out best. And then I think that should be quite exciting. But for now though, I think it's about time we took this case apart and got some of this stuff underway. Now this must be quite a familiar sight if you follow the channel a lot, but there is a crucial difference in that all of these parts came out without me having to drill the case and actually remove all the rivets, because there aren't any. These were all done with just screws, and that's one of the reasons I chose this chassis, as I mentioned. So it's quite interesting that you can remove pretty much the entire interior and rearrange it how you like, just because the way that it's built is it has like a strong interior frame and has lots of little screw mounts on the inside here. Now all these parts basically just screw into those, meaning that when you remove them, you've actually still got a strong chassis. Now this is going to be fantastic because obviously I want to add a whole load of new panels that fit the mod and the kind of water cooling things that I want to be doing. So having just a strong rigid framework makes that a lot easier, and also means that I can be a bit more creative with the mounting, and I don't have to fuss about reinforcing parts that normally would have been strong but are braced by components that are now missing. So all of these parts are going to be replaced. Some of these are going back in. I've had to just remove them so I can look inside, things like the front panel and stuff like that. They're going to be going back on, so don't worry. But this structural stuff here, that's going to be going, and I'm going to be replacing it with my own work. Now, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, and also head over to Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and builds.gg and follow us over there, because we're going to be posting up updates and little tidbits of information and work in progress shots of this mod as it happens over the coming few weeks, and you don't want to miss any of that. Until then though, I'll catch you next time.